We're going to start out talking a little bit about Rome Remastered because Kyle whinged about that, and he's like, "It's very important." I'm like, "Is it though?"
It
Yes.
is to me. It's actually
See,
still, in spite of all the anger I have towards this franchise, it's one of those love-hate relationships. Like, this game, to me, is what kind of like, I always sort of just assumed this. And I kind of knew this deep down, but to have it reaffirmed was just, it was not only just gratifying because you're like, oh, yeah, I was right, but it's also like, at the same time, it's like, oh, fuck, I was right. Like, I don't know. After playing Rome Remaster, one of the things that annoys me the most about this game is how much I'm having fun with this, in spite of the bugs, in spite of that it's an old game from 2004, and it has unit pathing problems, and so a slew of other issues, right? And I find myself having more fun than I ever have had in this franchise since any Warscape Total War I've ever played. And that annoys me. And what annoys me the most about this is this isn't even made by Creative Assembly. Like, they don't even get the proper credit for this because the development team behind this was Feral Interactive. Creative Assembly, from what we know from people like Republic of Play, nobody that works there anymore knows how to make Rome Total War Medieval 2. Because after the acquisition from Activision to Sega, a lot of those people just sort of, left and went to go work on other projects with other studios and stuff like that. And so that kind of just makes me mad, actually, at the end of the day.
well, that's the thing. One of the reasons why I kind of just don't care anymore. Just pointed this out too. Like, I can't be asked to cover like the Total War Warhammer thing because it's just another faction pack to me. It's just
Yeah.
a $60 faction pack that adds nothing. There's no really cool new like animations or units. They don't feel differently. They're just different stat bars. It's just so bland to me now. And it's been this way for a while now. I've been feeling kind of Total War slipping away from me in this regard for quite a while. Three Kingdoms was one of those little like wake up moments where I'm liking the campaign. The campaign gameplay has got a little bit of that magic back, but I despise the battles. The battles are awful. And when you really then take a step back as well, as Rome gave the opportunity to do, you really start to figure out the reason why. Because it's kind of like odd where you think to yourself, hey, what is this really? Am I just getting old? Am I just getting jaded? Am I just getting sick of the series overall or that kind of gameplay? And I don't think that's the case. It is the feature devolution that I talked about previously as well. Because when you look at Rome Remastered, you see that soul, that interest. Again, like you said, yes, there are problems, but the game just feels so much better. There's so much more stuff to do. You've got the diplomats. At first glance, the diplomat seems like a really boring ass gameplay mechanic. It's just an agent on the map that you need to move over there to initiate diplomatic talks. Why wouldn't you just have a tab to open that and send messages and so on? But it's another thing. It's a reason to be on the campaign map. Similar with agents, similar with spies, the ability to build spy towers, to build forts on the map, the ability to influence other nations, the ability to get randomly generated traits that makes a degree of sense rather than just having a few dots like, oh, +2 to melee attack. Like, that's bloody boring. It's difficult to pinpoint or to how do I put it? It's difficult to fully explain like what we mean when it comes to a video game soul because it's such a loose and fluffy goddamn term. It doesn't mean anything, right? But when a game has soul, you feel it. It's everywhere. It's in every iota of the game. It's in the finish. It's in the little details. It's in the passion. Like agent movies, yeah? That's an old favorite. They weren't necessary for the game. Technically speaking, they added nothing because you could watch like the first 5 seconds and you'd know the outcome of the mission. But they showed that developers gave a shit. It was extra labor that they put in the game for no other reason than because, yeah, this is cool. Let's have the Pope's hat be shot off his head by a crossbow. You know? And we just don't have that. Now, these days, when Creative Assembly runs into a problem, like, oh, our kill animations aren't playing correctly, right, let's just remove them entirely. We can't balance agent properly. Let's just remove agents entirely. Every time they encounter a problem now, they just cut away another piece of the game, which is the exact opposite of passion, of interest, of going that extra mile.
Yeah. See, we both saw it then. It's just one of those things where it's like the franchise has gained a lot of money and high polish and budget, and has its budget compared to Rome Total War now is like way larger than it ever was back then. But with the increased budget, and sure, they have better music and better, like, well, production quality, I will say, and better sound effects and better graphics. But what have these really given us? What is the better production quality for music given us? And I'd argue we've lost a lot of charm because they stopped using the Australian division, because after it closed down after Stormrise, they stopped using Jeff Van Dyke. And without him, we lost a lot of that music charm that we got from Shogun 1 and we got from Medieval 1 and Medieval 2 and Rome 1. A lot of tracks which were for Shogun 2 were recycled from Shogun 1, were just Jeff's work reused. And it's one of those things where just like it just doesn't have it, and it's just like you don't feel that charm anymore. And the whole thing about characters too, like Total War Warhammer and Three Kingdoms are an ample opportunity for character-driven like stories and character-driven interactions. Yet the characters in that have less personality than the Diplomat does from Rome Total War 1, who, by the way, the Diplomat will get traits, skills from just interacting from other factions, stuff like that. So much to the point where diplomats will actually gain like different bonuses. Like if I use my veteran diplomat, I can negotiate a peace deal with like the Danes when I was doing my Barbarian Invasion campaign. That would have probably never worked with another agent because he was such a soothsayer, such a man of word, you know? Could talk his way out of anything.
Soothsayer?
It's just a figure of speech. Get it? Speech.
But soothsayer just means that he speaks the truth, Kyle.
Yeah, well, he speaks the truth. The Danes shouldn't attack Londinium. They really shouldn't. It was
he used complicated words.
It was ill-advised. It was bad for them, and you know he just spoke the truth, and they believed him.
The thing, like you have a point there as well. Creative Assembly is now a studio of 800 people. They have probably the single best selling strategy game series now, with all of the various entries, etc. It's huge, it's massive, and it has really captured a very large casualized audience as well. I mean, hell, 800 employees. Holy shit, the revenue they must be making to pay that amount of people. And yet, where's the advancements? Where's the quality? Like again, matched combat, we remove that. Agents, we remove that. Watchtowers, we remove that. Religion, we removed that. Character personality, we removed that. Hell, Three Kingdoms, a game that is centered around these larger than life iconic characters, Liu Bei, Cao Cao, etc. You don't even get a lore blurb about them. You don't even get introduced to these characters. They just appear, and occasionally there's an event like, would I like to be friends with this guy or this guy? Why am I even fighting like Dong Zhui? Like, what did he do wrong? I don't know. Game hasn't told me.
Yep. It's just weird that that for such character-centric IPs like, you know, Total War Warhammer, you'd think there would be cool speeches where Carl Franz was going about the orcs, or when Three Kingdoms, when Dong Zhao, if you're playing Dong Zhu or whatever, and you fight Xiao Xiao, like, you'd think there'd be this like epic, like, that traitorous fucking whelp, like, I trusted him and he backstabbed me. You know what he says? Haha, very witty, very smart.
And we all knew it was bullshit. But I remember when CA was like, "Oh yes, character will remember each other. They will have speeches." No, they won't. No, they bloody won't. They've got like 3 or 4 lines which are repeated. And the worst part too is they, in Shogun too, like the voice actors there are brilliant. But that's because in Japan, voice actors are goddamn celebrities. They've got a quality up to them. The amazing voice acting. Now, granted, I would have preferred a full-on Japanese one as well, because they did do that for Three Kingdoms, but it's there's no passion in it. And in English, it's even worse somehow. It doesn't even sound like they're trying to sound Chinese, probably because that would be racist. I don't even know. And it just makes these flat, boring, uninteresting characters even flatter and more boring. The only reason I know that Cao Cao is supposed to be special is because he's the only one with a unique .jpeg in my goddamn army.
Yep. Look, he's got a different picture. I mean, at least they have unique character models, so there's always there's something, right?
There's something. And the system they replaced agents with too, where you take one of your boring ass generic generals who are so uninteresting and so useless that you can just send him off for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 turns and not even notice as he slowly worms his way into a position of maybe usefulness. You can't even direct where the hell he's going. And why did we kill the agent system? Again, it's because CA is like, well, we keep making the agents overpowered. Oh, shit. That is a problem.
When you overbalance your game, you often remove the fun aspects of it, making it a watered-down, boring mess.
See, that's the thing, too. Like, okay, you see this pathfinding often issues constantly in Rome and in Medieval 2 as well. One of the biggest, easiest to use kind of like abuses in Medieval 2, I remember, is there are some castles that have little kinks in the walls so that you've got a wall going past the gate, right? A little U shape. If you put archers on the opposite side of that, then the enemy will almost always try to climb up that wall. And because the AI is too dumb to get off the wall, they will stand on the wall as your archers on the opposite side just keep shooting at them. And you can wipe out unit after unit after unit like this. And it's dumb. And yes, it's still more entertaining and it's still a better game than the modern day Total War. Like, the combat's just gotten worse.
It really has. Like, think about Total War Warhammer, right? Don't even think about the siege battles, because we've talked to that to an almost ludicrous degree. Think about the battles in general with cavalry. Cavalry doesn't feel like cavalry at all.
No.
When monsters hit things, like, what do? Well, some guys die, and most people just fly backwards like 30 light years, and then they just get up. Like, that's not. And then they just get up. It's like, okay, my horses charge into the back. My heavy shot cav charges into the back of a unit of infantry in Rome 1. What happens? Tons of people die. Even some of the horses die. What happens in Total Warhammer? You look at the health. You look at the health pools that they're going down. You look at the numbers, and the number of the units, like 100 out of 100. Nobody died yet. Because of how the health pool works. I hate that. Yep. Like, the health pool system in the new Total Wars has just made everyone a sponge, and there's no like big threat anymore. Like, I used to be worried about general preservation. In Rome 1, I'm unlike that's the thing I also start to hate about legendary heroes now. Lords or whatever they call them. Like, before I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to send in my general unit. This is a big deal. Like, this is a risky gambit. He might die. This could cause some serious problems, both in the short term of this battle and the long-term repercussions, because he's the king of my little nation. That might cause some morale penalties to other armies and stuff. And it's like, what do I feel when Total Warhammer or in Three Kingdoms? Like, they're just like, he's got a massive health pool, he's fine.
Yeah, it's more like, haha, lawnmower hero, go kill all of the enemy.
Oh, case in point, Lubu in Three Kingdoms. Now, if you do have Three Kingdoms and you have the Lubu expansion where you can play as him in the campaign, you should, because it's hilarious. But at the same time, that exemplifies the problem with new Total Wars, though. It's like, yes, I have one legendary lord who can wipe out an entire army. Like, that's not very interesting. I don't play Total War games to play one guy to wipe out entire armies. I play Total War games to, maneuver armies and actually use big, giant armies in battle. I don't want to see one unit or one, general just easily able to wipe out half an army by himself. I think that's boring. That's not challenging. That's not interesting. It's like, oh, look, my anime protagonist just beats the crap out of everything again. Ooh, the stakes are so high.
Problem, isn't it? See, the chat is bringing up a good question here too as well. Balance is not necessarily fun. Now, that's entirely true, because this is one of my other little pet peeves. More and more, it feels like Creative Assembly is trying to create a balanced game. And I don't actually know who asked for that. Like, I'm not interested in my units being necessarily balanced. I'm not interested in my feudal knights in Medieval 2 being balanced against chivalrous knights, like the French ones, because they're different units. And frankly, these are single player games as well. The multiplayer scene is tiny. Creative Assembly has no interest in supporting it, and yet the single player is suffering with their constant little updates and constant goddamn power creep, to the point that the Beastmen is an excellent example of this. We're basically useless. And because they're trying to fix a problem that they have created in the first place. Let's make everything balanced and let's have tons of stats. Let's show you all of the stats. And that too is a bit of an issue as well, I think. Honestly, I'd prefer to know less about my units at this point, because they're just statistics now. They're just health pools with attack values, and I just purchase the units with the highest numbers, and that's it. There's no real feeling of getting a cool new unit anymore, almost.
That's so true.
Hell, the Total War Kingdoms expansion, right? Medieval 2.
Yep.
One of the best expansion packs perhaps ever made. The campaigns in that were blatantly unbalanced. You're playing the Teutonic Knights against a bunch of goddamn Lithuanian peasants. They don't stand a goddamn chance. In the New World expansion, one of the four campaigns, by the way, now you pay $60 for one campaign. Back then, you got 4 for the price of an expansion pack. But as the Spaniards, you've got units of like 40 dudes who slaughter like 200 natives, barely taking a scratch.
They've got cotton armor and plate, versus the natives have like bone and leather. Like that's not going to work well.
Yes, and yet that campaign was goddamn hilarious. I loved playing the natives there that's got bullshit units like bees nest throwers. They throw bee nests at people.
That's kind of scary when you think about
it. Yes. And you see the hordes just surrounding the Spanish lines, like units of 160, 200. Like, it's great.
Oh, there's so much charm in those. And they weren't balanced, and that's what kind of made them amazing.
They were good, and again, like, I cannot get over this point either. I will repeat this till the day I goddamn die, but this is very much so a consumer error, in my opinion. We keep accepting less, and we're just like, oh well, crumbs, good. Like $60, $60 goddamn dollars for Total War Warhammer 2. It's a goddamn faction pack with one half-assed new campaign, which basically boils down to a counting victory point timer. And when you look back at, again, Kingdoms, we had 4 of those campaigns, also with their unique mission objectives, with their unique agents, with unique religions, and all of those factions had their own goddamn unit rosters. I mean, how many new factions did we get in Kingdoms? Well, in the Teutonic Knight campaigns, there's, 4, I think? In the Holy campaign, there's like 2 Crusading factions and another 2 or 3 Middle Eastern factions.
Don't forget.
Then there were like 2 or 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't forget they also have off-map factions that spawn in too.
That too. It was massive. It was ginormous. It came on like 4 or 5 CDs back in the time when we had CDs. You'd have 1 CD per extra campaign. Basically, they sold you 4 games for the price of 1.
Yep.
And yet here we are paying $15-$20 for a DLC faction.
That is barely balanced and is just garbage. Like, you guys remember Beastmen on launch? That's the last time I stopped playing was it Total Warhammer? I started that was the one that broke it for me. Because like I was trying to play the multiplayer battles because I was still trying to have fun with the game. I was like, okay, what if we play like multiplayer battles with friends, and try to just play with the fantasy armies? Like maybe that'll be more interesting than the boring campaign map that lacks any personality and soul, right? Well, here's the problem. Every time they make a DLC faction, of course, being that it's a DLC, what happened when the Beastmen came out? Was it the Gore Bulls with the health potions, if I'm right? Like it was
Yes.
so broken. It was insane. It's like it ruined it. Like when they do these DLC packs, and they also said like, oh, okay, we're not gonna make any DLC packs that add faction units on top of faction units. Now you need to buy DLC on top of DLC on top of game to get DLC for the other game to make sure you have all the units unlocked. Otherwise, the AI in your campaign will use the units that are in the game because they want you to buy that DLC. They don't really care about the player. They don't want you to have a good balanced experience, or maybe not necessarily balanced, but a good experience in this point where you're like, I'm gonna play, the human, the Empire, but you're like, oh, I'm missing all the units because I didn't buy any of the DLCs, and here they have them, and now they're just, they have an unfair advantage, or they have access to some bullshit unit that isn't fair. Like that's dumb. Like especially for the Skaven, if you bought Total Warhammer 2 and you didn't buy the DLC, like Jesus Christ, like Jezziles and shit. Like no thanks. Like, no.
Yep. And that's the problem too. Like when you start adding in all of these stats, you create the need to balance the game. You have to, because now you've added in all the bullshit numbers. That was what was so beautiful of the old Total War games. The entire health pool, like the speed at which a unit died, was determined almost exclusively by defense. The unit's ability to not get hit. Once it got hit, it had 1 hit point. That is a super simple thing to balance. Now you've got armor, you've got shield, you got hit points, and you might have other bullshit modifiers on top of that, like natural armor or other modifiers. Suddenly, you've made a dual balance system with only 2 factors, and you've slapped on another 4. And you're sitting there wondering, why is this harder to balance?
Yep. And the more factions you
Oh,
introduce into a game, because as a developer, and I've experienced this myself, like the one thing is the more stuff you introduce, the more mechanics, the more factions, the more unique unit types you introduce into a system, the more difficult it will be to balance. And what's going to inevitably happen, which is happening already in this game and happens in other games, is things become obsolete. There becomes something that is no longer relevant because there's just too many other systems that it can't compete with everything. Not everything will ever be balanced. That's the reality of it. And with Total Warhammer, that's impossible. There's too many factions, too many unit types for everything to have some sort of equal value or good value. There's always that unit that falls to the bottom of the bin that everyone's like, yeah, that unit is garbage. It's like Rome 1, peasants. Like, you don't bring those into a multiplayer battle because you want to, win. You bring those because you think you're funny or something. That's about it.
and again, it all comes back to that lack of interest in making a truly solid product. And it's tragic. And I don't think Creative Assembly is going to be able to turn that boat around anytime soon. Like the feature degeneration is so deep now that we're overjoyed when they add in like a supply system. Like, oh, cool, supplies. How does that work? You have a bar and it slowly fills in friendly territory and depletes in hostile territory. There you go. A logistics system.
Oh
Happy
God.
now?
Oh God. The thing is, we could the fucking see. The thing is, like originally when Total War brought in like my units replenish in friendly territories, like yay. But now at the same time, because they've done that, like unit replenishment is trivialized to the point where it's like logistics, meh. I just walk into friendly territory, fort, sit there for a few turns, attack. Like in Rome
Yep.
Total War 1, I found it so fun to be like, all right, I'm sending an expedition from Britain because I'm playing as the Romano British, right? Into France, into the war-torn hell zone that it is, where all the barbarians are. And like, okay, this expedition has like only so many troops before it's gonna run out of like people. I need to capture a settlement that can replenish it, or I need to get ships to ferry fresh troops to the front line and ferry the veterans out so they can be replenished back at home. Like, there's a really cool aspect of like, holy shit, this is a big operation that was being undertaken. And if I were to do it in a modern Total War, I'd just be like, I take settlement, I just sit here for 4 turns and just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. There's no concern about there being an ocean in the way anymore. It doesn't matter because armies can just turn into boats too.
Is the problem. Like it's just another mechanic that is no longer there. And that is the root of the problem. It's just a lack of mechanics.